Let's cast our minds back to a time of lawlessness at sea. The golden age of piracy where iconic names drifted from port to port. And now, let's see what would have happened if one name wasn't killed, and what became of the Caribbean in the wake of the attempt on his life. A surprise attack, one that changed the fate of piracy in general. Through a calculating disguise, the great pirate Blackbeard was ambushed by the forces of Lieutenant Robert Maynard. The lieutenant's men struck hard against the sea dogs of war. But in this timeline, Blackbeard had the upper hand, and in the end, through cuts and bullet holes, the fierce pirate decapitated his attacker. In his hour of victory, Blackbeard sailed the Queen Anne back to the port of Tortuga, pulling the ship of the former lieutenant and his crew with him. Sickened with the perilous plots to destroy the pirate way of life, Blackbeard summons the highest of captains to a meeting, one which would turn the tides of the oncoming enemies of the British and French Royal Navies. The creation of the IIC, the Independent Islands of the Caribbean. Through Blackbeard's victory and the other pirates' initiative to create a bigger safe haven for those who seek the life of a buccaneer, people and former sailors flocked to the islands, creating a pirate army, those of which the Navy would fear. It is here that New Providence is the starting point. Very soon, the islands of the Bahamas, Jamaica, and Cuba are all succumb to the skull and crossbones. While taking it with sheer force, Blackbeard and his cohorts also find treasure in a different form. The governors of the islands, all ruling from the British, French, and Dutch, all bowed in shame as captives of the pirate purge. He who dabbles with pirates will bear the consequences. With the island and their resources, along with large slave groups, Blackbeard begins negotiations, and the two sides find mutual ground. In correlation with trade and a ceasefire on all pirate ships, the three nations receive their disgraced governors as a parting gift in exchange for crates of silver. With the celebrations underway, Blackbeard looks to cement this achievement by means of rules and codes. Though he has doubts about his ability to govern and keep up the lifestyle, he carves out one solution that finally cements him as the founding father of the islands. "3 years have passed, and the rules have stayed the same. Based on the pirate code written by Henry Morgan, the Constitution keeps pirates in line with regards to their captain and their peers. If you couldn't contribute in any way, you were deemed unfit to live freely. Your status of freedom would be revoked, and a slave you would become until higher-ups saw fit. Blackbeard's status as the founding captain proved useful in hiding the man's true feelings towards piracy as a whole. Before his plotted attack, Blackbeard wanted more retreat from the lifestyle, having been deemed the most recognizable name of the seas. Through the guise of a political spectrum, he could do away with the brash nature of the role, and in doing so, became a recluse, ruling behind the curtains of his manor. The luxury of the island delights and women surrounding him soon got to the famous pirate, and Blackbeard soon succumbed to his gluttony. He would die in 1749, covered in food and bearing 16 children from 8 different women. Even in death, and with a handful of appearances since the IIC was created, the pirate public still adored him, and the memorials would be filled with tears. "50 years on, and the death of Blackbeard is still felt throughout the sandy shores of the islands. In his place stepped a new man, and he stood out from the crowd. Through a chorus of yeas compared to nays, Gentleman Jack Burchell kept the progression of the IIC burning full steam ahead. Seemingly more aggressive than his predecessor, Burchell didn't waste his breath on hostiles entering the seas of the IIC. Burchell was brutal and used his fallen enemies as island decorations. Nor did he waste his words in getting the thing he wanted most. Trade deals between the British and French boiled over until the southern states of the US were threatened as a result. Burchell brought new renowned fear back into the nation's islands. Using threatening might of the pirate army as a playing card, he tested those on the peace treaty. Pirate life thrived as a result. Citizens of the IIC were more joyous in their status of life than ever before. But the best of times of the new century wouldn't last. Burchell was sadly assassinated in 1811 by a rogue slave who acted as his bodyguard during a rally at Tortuga. What followed in the wake of his murder was turbulence unlike any storm the islands have ever had. After Gentleman Jack Burchell's untimely death, the status of the IIC's government was up in flames. Juggling a reform of slave restructure, oncoming threats, and a total lack of presence, the closest bodies of the pirate castle eventually landed on one man's shoulders: William Norton. Norton, unlike Burchell, took too much of a liking to his captain's status without even a thought about the ones who voted him in. Years went by, and the situations piled up on the captain's desk. Refusing to budge or show any compassion, Norton stepped up his security with the slaves available, creating a ring that constantly surrounded the captain's castle. Instead of addressing crises head-on, Norton instead surrounded himself with suitable talking heads to do the work for him. The first quartermaster to the captain would be none other than one of Blackbeard's grandsons, Edward Teague. As the figureheads piled up with no compromise given to the captain's orders, the pirate public soon began to riot before Norton made the one rare appearance, delivering his subjects a place of worship at long last to the angels and demons of the sea, the Mary Rose Cathedral. While it dimmed the flame, it could not stop the reckless abandonment shown by the captain in the years he took control. By 1864, Norton had left the IIC dry of benefit. Increased tensions and crises near the American border made everyone on edge. Edward Teague could not get through to the captain, and neither would any other governing body. But then, a stroke of luck from a collective prey, Captain Norton became ill, and his position as captain hung in the balance. No one was upset to see Norton surrender the captain's title, but the debacle of who should succeed him took the last few months of 1864. Edward Teague gathered the captain's court and decided on who would be ideal to take Norton's place. The news circled around the islands, and locals put forward ideas for a suitable captain. The people wanted someone who cared for the traditions, cared for them, and upheld the way of the pirates beforehand. In the end, Teague was chosen. Edward Teague's son, that is. Sebastian Teague, only son of Edward Teague and great-grandson to Blackbeard. Sebastian was fondly loved by the public, taking part in traditional ceremonies, enjoying time in the community, and pirate darling. Sebastian loved the lore and superstition of the pirate culture, a long departure from his great-grandfather, who had once wanted to distance himself from that. Edward saw potential, untapped potential, the ability to listen and learn and put into practice the leadership that was sorely needed. At the young age of 22, on January 1st, Sebastian won in a landslide. Would the young prodigy raise the bar of what the IIC could become? Or would he bring the IIC into a disastrous, watery grave? With enemies all around him, who could he trust?